Hi guys, it's the Chappiness guy. Welcome to today's episode of Vestibular Talks. Today is episode 50. Yes, 50. We completed 50 episodes already, and I want to thank you guys for being so supportive, watching the episodes, being part of the interviews, and of course, finding your Chappiness. Today's special guest is Janine. She's going to talk to us about the world of Meniere's and how debilitating this condition can be. She's also going to talk to us about a documentary that she's working on regarding Meniere's so she can raise more awareness about the condition that we call invisible. So remember to like, share, and subscribe. Find new happiness, guys. Hi, guys. I just want to give you a warning that the preview for the documentary that Janine is working on, which is coming right after I finish talking right now, it could trigger some vertigo because the camera moves fairly quickly. So I just wanted to let you know that for people that get triggered by visual stimulation, maybe try to close your eyes or look away for a bit while that preview is presenting, and then you can continue on to watching the rest of the video. All right, find your happiness, guys.
Life-changing.
Frustrating.
Terrifying.
Debilitating.
Evil.
Meniere's is hell.
Meniere's disease is a mysterious vestibular disorder few people are aware of. It is a chronic, incurable, and invisible illness that devastates lives through horrible bouts of vertigo.
Vertigo for me comes in waves, then it peaks with violent spinning.
Couldn't even get out of bed.
The room, the ceiling, the walls are spinning all around me.
I had a tendency to fall down. Feels like I'm rocking on a boat. I sometimes get vertigo for 10 days straight and I cannot get out of bed for those 10 days.
I vomit, then I black out for a short period of time. The whole episode will last about 4 to 5 hours.
Along with constant tinnitus, painful ear pressure, hearing loss, and other symptoms.
My baseline tinnitus is a loud, high-pitched tone.
It sounds like there are insects sort of in my ears, not quite.
Like a white noise machine that...
The ringing sounds more like, and the whooshing sounds like.
Fatigue is my biggest problem.
I have almost complete hearing loss in my affected ear.
Hyperacusis, which is sensitivity to loud sound.
There is no specific test for Meniere's, so it can be very difficult to diagnose.
It took me 4 years to get a formal diagnosis.
Took me about 14 months.
It took me 9 years to get a correct diagnosis.
It was very frustrating and very aggravating.
I was desperate to get better.
I thought I was going crazy for a while.
Without a cure, simple tasks and day-to-day routines become challenges.
I don't really take stand-up showers anymore.
I'm afraid to drive.
If I'm in a small room with multiple voices speaking, it's painful.
Losing my hearing in my right ear. It's hard to get a job.
Meniere's has not entered the public consciousness like Parkinson's or MS has.
Most people have no clue what Meniere's disease is.
My doctor, he barely really knew what Meniere's disease was.
So many don't understand how you can be fine 1 minute and so sick the next.
Just because you can't see it doesn't mean that it isn't happening.
A lot of people just assume you've had too many cocktails.
Are you drunk?
It's something invisible that you carry with you.
This lack of understanding from family, friends, and colleagues can lead to isolation.
I've become much more introverted.
It prevents me from so many opportunities.
I don't go to movies.
I just miss social events because even if I go, I can't hear anybody, so I might as well just stay home.
It can be a little lonely and you can feel like you're on a little Meniere's island.
Help us raise awareness and bring Meniere's disease out of the shadows.
Awareness would help everybody.
Meniere's is a devastating and invisible illness that almost no one has heard of. Patients are suffering in some of the worst ways imaginable, and so few people actually understand what it's like.
More awareness can lead to more funding so that researchers and medical organizations can find better treatments and hopefully a cure.
To learn more and support the development of the documentary Unheard, The Ears of Meniere's, please go to earsofmenieres.com. Follow us on social media and spread the word. Can you identify this illness?
Extreme vertigo.
Sudden sensorineural hearing loss.
Ear pressure.
I get horribly nauseous.
Migraine.
Hyperacusis.
I start shaking.
Vomit, then a blackout.
Tiredness and the
I would
exhaustion.
lose my balance.
Yes, circular
I
spinning.
fell to the floor.
Stumped? So are many doctors. So diagnosis can be a difficult journey.
Getting the right diagnosis was really, really frustrating. I can't even count how many doctors I went to see.
4 years to get a formal diagnosis.
A lot of frustrating appointments. They either would not believe you or attribute everything to anxiety.
They originally thought it was due to stress. Usually when I go to the ER, they always pump me with saline, thinking it's dehydration.
I could not live a normal life.
It took me 9 years.
Unfortunately, there is a lack of awareness and understanding about Meniere's disease.
I was scared to death, and I was laying down 18 hours out of a day.
Thought I was having a stroke.
I was progressively getting worse, and I did not know what was wrong with me.
A lot of the doctors don't even know anything about it. I had to go to a specialist way out of state to even be diagnosed.
It doesn't have to be this way.
I wish my doctors had a cure so that way I wasn't suffering as much as I do.
The doctors that I have, the ones that didn't know about it, I pray that they are now researching more about it.
Go to earsofmenieres.com to learn more about Meniere's and the development of our documentary. Follow our social media and help us get the word out.
Right, Janine, we're live. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you? Thank you so much for having me on.
No, thank you for taking the time to chat with us and share your journey. So thank you, I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great what you're doing, and the channel provides so much wonderful inspiration and knowledge for everybody that suffers from vestibular disorders. And for those that don't, I think it's great to have other people that actually don't have these conditions actually listen and watch your chats, because for them, it'll be such an educational experience.
It's an eye-opener for sure. Janine, would you mind telling us a little bit about you, your own story?
Sure. I started having symptoms with my inner ear about this time 8 years ago. It started with muffled hearing, tinnitus. It sounded like static, you know, those times when you go to a concert, you hear the loud music and then you come home from that and you kind of had that kind of sound. And I had some head pressure and dizziness, and I thought it was just because I had spent the day before out at a loud bar watching the football playoffs.
Okay.
But it continued for the next couple days, so I went to a doctor, and they said, oh, you have an ear infection. They gave me antibiotics, sent me on my way. And after a while, it kind of subsided, so I thought, okay, great, the infection is gone. And then it came back again. And went back to the doctor, oh, it's an ear infection, have some more antibiotics. And this happened about 4 times over the process of 6 months until I started to think, you know, this is beyond an ear infection. I think I need to go to an ENT, because there were days I wasn't having the severe vertigo, which happens with a lot of people at the onset of Meniere's disease. With the spinning, I was definitely lightheaded and I was definitely dizzy, but I didn't have the full-blown attacks just yet. So I made an appointment with an ENT, and luckily I found someone who right away said, this sounds like Meniere's disease. And I know that's not the case with a lot of other people. So I went for some tests. He said, yes, it is. Started me on a diuretic, and that was the beginning of my journey. So it's going on 8 years now.
Wow. And so a couple of very interesting things you mentioned. Number one, the fact that the first doctor prescribed you so many rounds of antibiotics, that could be so hurtful as well for your system, because antibiotics, I mean, I'm not against them. I think they are great and they do what they are meant to do, but they attack the good bacteria and the bad bacteria in your body, leaving some sort of unbalance. And when you're already feeling unbalanced from your balanced system and you add all these rounds of antibiotics, it probably doesn't even help the healing journey of your body, because you're putting so much into it. The other thing that you mentioned is that you got an early diagnosis of Meniere's disease early in your journey. What do you feel when you got the diagnosis? Because for many people, they hear the words Meniere's and they're like, what is that? So how was it for you?
For me, it wasn't so much the Meniere's, even though I had never heard about it, it was the disease part of it. Is the doctor saying you have a disease? And the first thing I thought of was, am I going to die? You know, Meniere's disease, I had never heard of this before. So, you know, he reassured me. He said, no, that this isn't a disease that will kill you, but it's unfortunately chronic and incurable. And I think that was the part where it kind of had my head spinning even more after hearing that than it did earlier, because, you know, obviously not knowing anything about this. And, you know, the doctor was very nice and very helpful, but he also had other patients to see. So it wasn't as if he could sit down with me for an hour at that time and say, here's everything you need to know. Here's what actually might make you feel a little bit better hearing this diagnosis instead of being so scared. So I, like many other people, jumped on the computer and just started researching and, you know, took the information that he gave me and then just tried to find out more. So it was very scary and unsettling. And it's, you know, a rough road, especially at that time when I didn't know anybody else that had this condition. And at that point, I wasn't really on Facebook and social media, and it didn't even dawn on me to reach out to try to find other people with it. So it was kind of feeling I was, you know, on this long road trip by myself.
Yeah, it feels that you're very alone in a time like this. I know, I'm sorry you experienced that, Janine. And the other thing that you said, the doctor couldn't spend the proper time to teach you or to walk you through the process of like, okay, this is our plan of action. You're diagnosed with this condition. This is how it's going to affect your life. This is how we're going to try to control it. When doctors don't do that, they leave you, like you said, basically fending for yourself. And then you go online, and Dr. Google can be a great tool at times, but other times it comes up with the scariest type of like worst case scenario type of thing. So so I remember when I started researching the condition that I was diagnosed with, I found a lot of horrible stories, and I kept thinking, oh my God, like what am I gonna do with my life? But eventually you start to meet people and talk to people that have lived with this for many years and they have survived it and they thrive. They don't only survive, but they thrive regardless of the condition. So the internet can be a very tricky place at times. It can be be quite confusing.
I think that's what's so different with somebody that has a vestibular disorder, because a lot of people don't talk about them. You don't hear much about it. And it's not like getting a diagnosis. You know, you don't want anybody to get a diagnosis of anything, obviously. But if somebody gets a diagnosis of MS or, you know, God forbid, something like Parkinson's, there's that awareness of the people around you, and they're kind of like, oh, okay, I get what that is. I kind of understand what you might be going through. There's already support groups that your doctor probably is aware of that you can go to. But things like vestibular disorders, you know, I think they're there, but they're harder to find. And, well, maybe not harder to find, but I think people don't necessarily, at least I didn't, automatically go search for them, because I didn't think at the time it existed. You know, with all these other groups, you know, with cancer support groups and Alzheimer's support groups, you hear about that, they're there, but it didn't even dawn on me to try to find that. And I think through having more awareness through social media and things like this, it might reach people like me where I was, you know, 8 years ago.
Okay, now Janine, when the doctor prescribed you some medication at the beginning, did the medication help the symptoms at all, or not really?
It did. I started off just on doing a diuretic, you know, which was obviously to try to stop any buildup of fluids in the inner ear, which might cause problems. And being on a low salt diet, you know, I think everybody kind of starts with those two things. So for me, the diuretic I was using as needed. Now I've kind of built up a little bit more, and it did help at some point. I think diet is a huge thing, and I still battle that every day. Doing low salt, low sugar is really tough for me. I love my sweets, so that can be a battle. But eating fresh helps a lot. Lowering, you know, the amount of processed foods. As my symptoms progressed and I started getting more vertigo, which kind of happened this past year, the doctor put me on meclizine, which I was taking as needed. If I started to get an attack, I would take it right away to try to, prohibit how long it lasted. And then I'm also have Valium. So those two are just as needed. But I know a lot of people have to take those daily because their system is so bad. I luckily am not at that point right now. So medication I don't rely on as much as others. I'm trying to do other things to kind of offset some symptoms so I don't get to the point where I need medication every day.
Okay, fair enough. And like you mentioned, diet is quite important, especially because you just told me before we went on the air that you've been recently diagnosed with a new condition. You mind telling us a little bit about it?
Yes. It's interesting how we talked before about how once your vestibular system kind of starts to get off whack, it brings in a lot of other things. So for people with Meniere's disease, apparently there's a large percentage of them that can then start getting vestibular migraines. And that's what I was recently diagnosed. But the strange part is when I first started getting these symptoms, the doctors that I went to who weren't my specialists didn't think that's what it was because it was presenting itself for me as sinus pressure. I was getting kind of like a whoosh of swelling, like here and, in my head. So it didn't feel like a typical migraine. It felt like sinus issues. Mm-hmm. So again, doctor said, oh, you have a sinus infection. And it didn't even though it was causing me to have dizziness and to have more vertigo and to have nystagmus, which was new to me, the shaking of the eyes is something that's really freaky. Yes. I went to a couple of doctors because we were during lockdown and COVID. So I was doing video chats with, just clinics. And again, more antibiotics, more steroids, until finally I went in person to my specialist, my neurologist and my ENT. And I went for some scans and everything. And they're like, yeah, no, this looks like vestibular migraines. So that was really interesting to me because I, again, had heard of vestibular migraines, but to me, I thought a migraine is, that really bad head pressure where you get it, and I didn't have that. So it didn't even dawn on me that this was another vestibular issue that I was dealing with.
And it is quite common that many people that suffer from vestibular migraines, they don't feel connected to the word migraine itself, because often people think migraine is a bad headache. That's what they associate it with. With this condition, you don't really get headaches. Yes, you get pressure in different areas of the head, and sometimes you in the back of the head, sometimes in the front, but it's not like a constant headache. It's more of the dizziness, the imbalance, the eyes vibrating, visual disturbances. So it can be quite tricky, and for people to understand that this is also part of a migraine is confusing. For sure, it is very confusing.
When I first started, I thought, okay, well, this is my Meniere's because I was having the vertigo and everything, and I was taking the meclizine, but that wasn't helping. And it would stop the nausea or any vomiting, but it wasn't really lessening the amount of attacks. And all through the month of April, all through the month of June, I basically could hardly function, because I was so dizzy. And again, I started going on the websites and they were saying, oh, well, sinus infections can cause vertigo and dizziness. So I thought, okay, well, that must be what it is. And I started pumping myself with sinus medicine, and that didn't help. So I think it's really important for anybody that if one round of seeing a doctor doesn't help, like, you really need to be your own advocate. And even though I had experience with all this other vestibular stuff, again, it didn't dawn on me that this was another vestibular disorder. So it's really confusing.
It is, and especially because there is a saying that goes along these lines. It says, when someone has a hammer, every problem resembles a nail. And the reason why I'm saying that is because doctors, for example, I lived the same journey that you're describing. I started feeling pressure in my nose as well, and I went to an allergist, and he's like, those are allergies. Take nasal sprays, and everything will go away. I'm like, okay, I did that. I did feel a little bit better, but the dizziness remained. So I'm like, that's not it. So I went to an ENT, and he's like, no, it's vertigo. You have BPPV. And I'm like, okay, well, that must be what it is. So we did some exercises, didn't get better. So then I went to a neurologist. He's like, no, this classic vestibular migraines. So every doctor that specializes in a specific area, the symptoms tend to resemble a condition that they are familiar with. So it's really difficult to get an actual proper diagnosis. And as you know, if you don't get a proper diagnosis, you don't get the proper treatment. So that being said, now that they diagnosed you with vestibular migraines, did they offer any kind of treatment?
Yes, actually, the doctor told me to up the amount that I take my diuretic before they put me on any other type of medicine, because I know there's beta blockers and calcium blockers and stuff that people take for vestibular migraines. So she said, let's try to up the diuretic, and I went for vestibular therapy for about 2 months, and that really helped. At Tough, it was a little hard because the therapy can make you more dizzy, but after a while, training your system that, because there was a time where I would be at my computer and I would hear a sound and I would just look up, and then all of a sudden it would start, just from turning. And I didn't do a big motion. I did a very simple, small motion. But as you probably know, anything like that can bring something on. So I still try to do my exercises every day, even though the therapy has stopped. And I think that has really helped. So there are still days where I wake up and I feel a little lightheaded, but I have not had a major vertigo episode, and I haven't had to take any Valium or Meclizine for the past 2 months. Yeah. So I consider that a success so far.
That is great. And the unfortunate thing, Janine, about these conditions is that they, as you mentioned earlier, there is not an actual cure, right. and there is no actual medication that attacks the problem. For example, for the migraines, like you said, beta blockers, calcium channel blockers, antidepressants, and these are medications that seem to help, but they are not specifically designed for these conditions.
Exactly.
So you feel a little bit disheartened when they prescribe a bunch of different medications and you try everything, but nothing seems to really work. Thankfully, in my case, I found something that is giving me my life back. Like I'm able to live a pretty normal life. I do deal with symptoms daily, but I'm able to drive, to work, to socialize. I know my limits, of course. I cannot listen to loud music. I cannot be in really busy places when there is a lot of people because visually it triggers me. But I'm doing much better, and I can see that from what you're saying, you have gotten much better compared to 8 years ago when the journey first started, because that's probably really scary. Janine, in those 8 years period, is there anything that you notice was more consistent? Like, for example, the dizziness was more consistent, or the nausea, or the visual disturbances, or there were things that will come and go in those 8 years' time?
I think for me, the most consistent has been the hearing issues. So not so much the vertigo and the nausea, but I have hearing loss. I just got hearing aids 2 months ago. So that's been an adjustment for me working with that. I have constant tinnitus, the levels of which vary. So some days it's a little bit higher, some days it's a little bit lower, but I always have, I'm bad lateral, but I have my issues more in my left ear. So right now I kind of hear that static kind of sound, or if you put a shell up to your ear, and a little bit of a pulsating. So sometimes if it's bad, people get like a pulsating where you can hear your heartbeat or your pulse in your ear. So that has been pretty consistent for at least the past 5 years. And, it can drive you crazy because you have this in your head and you can't get rid of it. There's nothing you can do to make it go away.
Especially when everything is quiet, it kind of like amplifies, and you're like, I just want this out of my head. Yes, it's right.
And the tough part too is that I also have the hyperacusis and the accruitment, which is the sensitivity to sound. And with the hearing loss, it's very strange how this works, and I don't understand the specifics to this day. But when you have hearing loss, decibels of sound can actually sound higher. So if I'm talking right now a normal conversation, a normal level, my ears, I hear it like this.
Like
it
you're
comes
screaming,
over much higher. So loud environments, what you were saying, going into a crowded pub or a restaurant that's really loud, it could be painful because I hear, even though I have hearing loss, those sounds come across at a higher decibel level. So I've kind of trained my friends and family. Back before COVID, I would go out to a restaurant. If my friends went there beforehand, they would text me, "Oh, this place is going to be way too loud for you. We're going to have to find another place." So in that respect, it's kind of helpful that people know a little bit about what might trigger me. But it's strange, it's an enigma that, like, I have hearing loss, but yet loud sounds are very painful to me.
Yeah, it's like a contradiction, but it is real. And something that is also odd is, I don't know if you get it, but there are times when I get the high pitched tinnitus. It's just beep, and it could be out of nowhere. I could be talking to you here right now, and then suddenly my ears just go beep, really loud, and then it quiets again. So it's very
Yes,
odd.
yes. That happens occasionally. For me, it's more of that white noise sound, that static, the whooshing kind of,
Like a whoosh. Yeah.
which I think is a little bit easier to tolerate than the high-pitched ringing. I get that occasionally, but luckily not as much. And I've talked to a lot of other people that have that constantly, and that can be, really awful to deal with.
Wow. Now, Janine, you mentioned that your friends are quite supportive because they text you ahead of time to let you know what's going on. How was it for you to explain to family, loved ones, and friends what your condition is and how it affects your life on a daily basis?
It was difficult at first because I didn't even know how to explain it to people. And once I started to find out what my triggers were and what, kind of limitations I might have, the majority of my friends and family were very understanding. And at the one time, the employer that I had was very understanding because I live in New York City, and it's a very loud city and it's full of triggers. So there are days when I just wake up and I know getting on the subway today is not going to happen.
Yeah.
And there are times when I feel fine in the morning and I have plans, and then I have to text my friends at half an hour beforehand and say, you know what, I can't make it. And I think in the beginning that was a little rough because people didn't really get it. Like, wait, you spent all day at work and you were fine, and you're supposed to come meet me for some event, and all of a sudden you're canceling on me. So I think it took some time for people to kind of understand that, but it's still a little tough. I mean, even after 8 years trying to explain to people what it's like to have vertigo, if you haven't had that, or to have the nystagmus, it's, words don't always do justice
Yes.
to what is happening inside you. That's why they call it an invisible illness.
You're right. And speaking of raising awareness, you have sent me some videos in the past about some interviews that I believe you have done that to people that suffer from Meniere's. How do you get involved in that whole raising awareness and creating these videos and things like that?
Well, basically, a couple of years ago, I was making a career shift. I was an entertainment publicist for about 20 years, working in film and television, and wanted to get more into the developmental side of production. And, my friends said, well, why don't you develop your own project? That way you get that experience. And I kind of thought, well, if I'm going to develop my own project, it should be something that I have a personal background or knowledge of, because making an independent film is very long. It's a very difficult process. I don't have a lot of money, so I can't just say, hey, I'm going to take $1 million and start production. So you had to have a passion for the topic. And I thought, well, here I am. I just started finding these Facebook support groups and, being part of a community where people are talking about this. And over again, people kept saying, nobody gets it. Nobody understands. I can't really explain it. And I thought, well, having Meniere's, it's a visual, using film to create symptoms and to be able to use audio to kind of recreate what it sounds like in our head. I thought, wait, maybe I have something here. So I started developing a documentary called Unheard: The Ears of Meniere's. And it was right around the time that Huey Lewis was diagnosed with Meniere's, and he was being public about it. So I thought, oh, great, get him on board. Let's, use a couple of celebrities to build awareness. So we started, I got a crew together, started developing the project. Right at the beginning of last year, 2020, we started to kind of go out to corporations and to get financial grants. So we had the budget to start production, and then COVID hit. So being stuck at home, I kind of thought, well, what can I do to keep the momentum going, but to also, raise awareness so that more people know what's going on. And I figured everybody's sitting at home in front of their computers. Why not ask people like me that have been through this journey to record themselves talking about what has happened to them, how it's affected their lives. And then we can assemble that into these, really cool short social media videos to throw out there to, twofold raise awareness for Meniere, so that somebody that has the condition can post it on Facebook and be like, here's a little bit of what I go through. Here's an example that you can show your family and friends, other people talking about it, some visual and audio effects. And then it could also let people know that we're working on this documentary, because hopefully that will give people hope that a project like this, then, if we can get it made in the next year or two, we'll have something to show people to say, hey, we will have simulations of vertigo. We'll have camera work that will show people what it's like, and we can use different sound effects to recreate tinnitus and the hearing issues that people have. And then we can have something to point to. And then hopefully with that awareness will drive more funding to hopefully have more research for better treatments and a cure. So it's a domino effect. So with these little videos and the ones that I sent you, we're just hoping that people can use them to throw out on social media and to get, to bubble up, to get more education about it.
Yes, and it's brilliant because when I saw your videos, you see the reality of the condition when in these people's faces and how they describe it and how they struggle, especially with the aspect of getting diagnosed. Yeah, many of them take years to get diagnosed, and you see that, and you kind of like understand their pain. I mean, I understand it better because I'm going through something similar. But even when my wife saw the videos, she's like, wow, like this is rough, like this is hard. I'm like, yeah, like a lot of people are dealing with conditions that unfortunately many doctors dismiss as anxiety, depression, mental illnesses, when in reality they are just conditions of the vestibular system that are affecting all of these other systems of the body, and they are so unknown that many doctors don't know how to diagnose them properly. So your videos are brilliant. I love them. I saw them and I'm like, this is great.
Thank you. And it's a great example of what we hope to achieve in the film as well. And there's one video that we put out a couple months ago. It's also on our website that is just talks briefly about hearing issues. And the actual video was, the sound effects were created by this guy, Richard Einhorn, who I got connected with through just the outreach that I've been doing. And he made a sample of what his hearing sounds like when he was going to an audiologist appointment. So he doesn't have Meniere's, but he has another inner ear disorder, and he works in the recording industry. So he was able to jump on board and do this little sampling to bring to his audiologist to explain, okay, this is what it sounds like for me. And he let me use that to throw on to make a little video for. And I played it for my mother and for my brother for the first time. And when my mom listened to it, I saw in her face, she kind of got a little like, oh, that's what it sounds like for you? That's how you hear? And I said, yes. And just getting a little glimmer of that understanding for me was amazing, but it was also for her, because then she kind of got it and understood why, even if you speak louder, sometimes that doesn't help, because it's the distortion of the hearing that plays a part too. And, it's little things like that that we're hoping to continue to do, to put out a video once a month until we can start the full production where we can really, get good value simulations that we could, show people. But I'm hoping, so far these seem to resonate with people, and a lot of people have responded and saying, oh my God, this is what it's like for me.
They can relate to it for sure, and it's great. I love the videos. Janine, what have you done in the last 8 years that you found helpful other than the medication? You mentioned diet. It's part of low salt. Is part of the recovery healing process. Have you done anything else that you found makes you feel better? Whether it is yoga, meditating, just or listening to calming music, like anything that helps you?
Exercise definitely helps. I'm not someone who likes to be in the gym for 2 hours, but I definitely feel that exercise helps. This past year has been really tough because with the onset of the vestibular migraines, there were times when just walking down the street was difficult. So I haven't been able to exercise as much as I would like. So in place of that, I was doing Tai Chi, which I found at least was a good movement. It was good for stability. Yoga was a little tough for me because a lot of the movements, the up and down fluidity, doesn't always work with my head. So doing a lot of walking and Tai Chi has helped. I also found that CBD oil helps a little bit too because it's an anti-inflammatory. So anything that's anti-inflammatory, whether it's diet or CBD oil or something like that, I think helps, stop the buildup of the fluid in the inner ear. And meditation, I think for a lot of us that helps because there's a lot of anxiety with this disease because you never know when it's going to happen. You never know when it's going to strike. You're excited to go out and do something fun, and then all of a sudden, boom, you're stuck at home, and it makes you nervous to have plans. So anything that can help you reduce stress and anxiety, that I think helps kind of stave off some of the symptoms or the triggers that might happen. So those are the key things that, and every now and then, for me, wine and beer. I like my alcohol. I can't give up my Guinness. It's not going to happen. So you have to treat yourself.
Yeah, I have a friend that I've interviewed in a few episodes. He's from England, and he same thing for him. He takes medication, so he helps him get very balanced. But he's like, I'm not gonna stop my beers. So he's like, so the medication helps me drink a few beers. He's like, I'm gonna keep on it. So I find it like it's something that he likes, and he's not willing to sacrifice it due to this condition. So I find it that, all power to him, because a lot of people are very afraid of what they can and cannot do. But he seems to be like, no, I'm going to enjoy my life, and I'm going to still live as normal as possible. So I admire him for that. Yeah.
And I think, this is something that you may not have that much control over, but surrounding yourself with a good support system is very important too, because you need to be around people who accept what your reality and your lifestyle is. So if unfortunately you have family or friends or a partner that isn't supportive and makes you nervous about being open and honest about how you feel, about maybe having to be more flexible with plans or canceling plans or changing things around, if you don't feel like you have a support system that can help you with that, then that's going to create more anxiety, and that's going to create, and make you revert more into yourself and be more isolated. And that's the worst thing that you can do with having a condition like this, because it already makes you kind of, become more of an introvert, and as best as you can. And if it's not the people in your life, if unfortunately there's not a lot, then seek out support groups or, channels like this, and connect with people that have similar experiences so that you can lean on them, because that takes off, I think, a lot of the pressure of having this condition, is knowing that you can be yourself.
Yeah, no, well said. And you're right. A good support system makes a big difference. You're completely right about it, Janine. Where can people find you and talk to you or find out more about the documentary?
I am on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under our production company's name, which is Second Chapter Productions. And it's second as in 2ND, not the word second spelled out. We also, our website connects to, if you type in Ears of Meniere, which is the name of our film.com, that goes directly to our website. So that's sometimes a little bit easier for people to remember, earsofmeniere.com, and Facebook page, secondchapterproductions.com, on Instagram. We go onto our social media pages, and all of the videos that we've been doing so far are up there, and you can share them, or you can direct message me. I can also send you actual copies of the video that you can download if you want to put it on your own social media platforms, or send them to your doctor or to anybody that you think might be interested. It's a big help to try to get the word out.
Yeah, even show them to family members that don't understand what's going on. You can show them, hey, this is what I'm living. So
right.
to make it more real.
On our website too, and on the Facebook page, the first video that's pinned is our overall hero video, which is basically kind of an all-encompassing overview of Meniere. So it talks a little bit about the journey of getting diagnosed, issues with vertigo, tinnitus, and then that's our main kind of video that has everything. And then we're doing smaller videos about each individual topic. So one of the ones that you referenced earlier was the journey to diagnosis, how for some people it can take a lot of years. We're going to do one separately on tinnitus. We're going to do a short one separately on hearing loss. So we'll be taking everything from that main video and breaking it down and kind of examining it a little bit closer. So if you follow us, you'll be able to know when the new ones are posted.
Awesome. That's great. That's really cool. Janine, what does the future hold for you?
Well, I think the future that I'm looking forward to is getting COVID under control and just being able to be with my family and friends. And I try not to think about what this condition holds or keeps me from. I try to think about what this condition can teach me and how it can help me live a better life. And I think that's what the future holds for me, is hopefully being able to create this film, to put it out there, to get more awareness for Meniere's and other vestibular disorders. And from that, just, living a happy, healthy life.
That's really good. That's a really nice way to put it. And my last question to you, Janine, is, as you know, the channel is called Find Your Chappiness, so find your happiness. What does Janine do to find her chappiness?
Besides drinking Guinness, I think is being true to yourself. Really just being kind to yourself. Not living in the moment, I think, is a big thing that I've been working on personally. Not worrying about mistakes I made in the past or being scared about what the future might bring, but living in the moment and just focusing on what's happening right now, and that, hey, I'm having a great conversation with you, I'm feeling good, and that brings me happiness.
Yes. Awesome.
Or chappiness, I should say.
Chappiness, yes. Yeah, savor that moment. You're right. We often, I'm guilty of that. We often worry too much about what we've lost in the past and what we might lose in the future. So we're not living the present moment because we're constantly, but I used to be like this, and how am I gonna be in the future? No, so I think you're completely right. You hit it right where it is. It's enjoying and savoring that good moment that you're experiencing right now. So yeah, very good, Janine. Awesome. So, well, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Definitely gonna keep sharing the videos because I think they are great, well done, and they create a lot of awareness and a lot of sympathy from people that are living through these conditions. So I'm definitely gonna keep sharing them, and yeah, keep up the great work. That's awesome.
Well, thank you so much, and I hope you continue doing these conversations and posting them, because I think it's a really wonderful thing that you're taking the time to do this for a lot of us out there. So appreciate it.
No, my pleasure. All right, Janine, have a wonderful day. Talk soon.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.